Now, if sex is a good gift that comes from God and we need to follow His will for it, that sounds good, but that's really difficult. Paul acknowledges as much in verse 12 of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, where he uses a really strong word that implies how we oftentimes think about our sexual desires. He says, I will not be mastered or ruled, dominated by anything. You know, all too often, we as human beings feel ruled by our sexuality. People say things like, I can't fight this feeling anymore. Matter of fact, we get taught to sing songs like that, don't we? We say things like, oh, I fell in love, as if love was like this trapper who's like, got us, and we fell into the trap, and we couldn't help it, it just happened. And we have to express ourselves romantically and sexually because of that feeling. People say this when it comes to pornography addiction. I just can't stop. I can't stop now. Like, I have to do it. I have to watch. I think about it all the time. I can't stop. People will say this about same-sex attraction. I can't help the way I feel. And look, I'm not denying any of those feelings. All those feelings I just said, I understand they're real feelings, and I'm not denying that they're there. But what I'm telling you that Scripture teaches us over and over again is that we can't be mastered by those feelings. And I know this is really difficult, especially in a world that's driven by the idea that you should follow your heart, you should follow your feelings, whatever is inside of you, just let it happen. God says different. I don't know what else to say to you about that. Over and over and over again, God says you can't let your feelings rule you. You can't let your body rule you. Think about passages like Galatians 5 and 2 Peter 1 that emphasize that, hey, if you're going to really follow after God, you've got to have self-control. And by the way, you know, even if you're watching this video and you're not a Christian and you think this is kind of dumb to even care about sexual ethics and all that kind of stuff, you know that self-control is important. Because whenever a rapist comes out, you say, why didn't you control yourself? No means no. And that's right. Why is that true only for rapists? And it is true for sex offenders of all types. But you know what? Actually, any of us who violate God's will, we are on some level offending God's standards. We have to understand that when God says no, it means no. Whenever He says this is the way sex works, we have to trust Him that this is the way sex works. And look, our desires may be perverted. Not by our own choice, maybe by our own choice in some cases, but maybe because we live in a messed up world where messed up things happen. You may have been abused, or your body chemistry may just do weird stuff to you. Who knows what the causes are? But whatever your desires may tell you, whatever your body may tell you, you have to rule over them. Like God told Cain in Genesis chapter 4, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is for you, but you must master it. Or as Paul would say, I will not be mastered by anything. You know, Jesus' disciples in Matthew chapter 19 saw the challenge of this commandment, to have self-control, to not let our sexual desires control us, but that we control them. In Matthew 19, Jesus had given some really stringent requirements about marriage. He said, listen, there's no divorcing. Doesn't matter who you fall in love with. Once you commit to your husband or wife, that's it. And the only cause that a divorce could ever happen, not that it should, but could ever happen, is if one of the partners or the other commits infidelity, sexual immorality. The disciples after that said, wow, I guess it's just better to not even marry. And Jesus doesn't soften His stance. He doesn't say, oh, no. I mean, in some cases, it's okay to just do what your heart tells you, do what your body tells you. Jesus says, look, some people are made eunuchs from birth. Some people are made eunuchs by men. In other words, some people are not going to be able to express themselves sexually like other people will, either because of something that happened at birth or something that someone did to them. But Jesus said, you know, some people are not going to be able to engage sexually because of their devotion to the kingdom of heaven. So, I guess I'll ask you, what do you want to be ruled by? You want to be ruled by your desires that will let you down, disappoint you, and eventually will fade with time, and you'll be left with no direction, nothing to control you, nothing to guide you, nothing to lead you. Do you want to be mastered by your desires? Or do you want to trust in the King of Heaven, who will teach you how to not be ruled by anything but His love and His truth? May we all say with the Apostle Paul, I will not be mastered by anything.